Obviously, you make this roster change, you bring Malta in, and then straight away you're moving into the IEM Sydney qualifiers, which you end up clean sweeping relatively comfortably. You get the 2-0 over Legacy, you get the 2-0 over Chiefs, and it really just seems like once you kind of bring Malta into this roster, things seem to work out. And for you in particular, this is your first IEM Sydney as well. So this obviously must be a pretty big deal for you as an individual, right?
Yeah, it's like the first time. This is pretty much the biggest tournament I've ever been in. So I was like, yeah, we want to do the best and everything. So everyone's really excited. Everyone's trying their best and all that. And yeah, it was definitely one of the best tournaments to ever go to.
Okay. So aside from it being like a big moment for you being able to play IEM Sydney, we obviously go into that match where you play against SK. And I wrote down here, Grayhound ends SK's career. Now, I think it was already kind of on the downward trend at that point in time.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty big scalp, right? This is the first time that you seem to have beaten a tier 1 team as a roster.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for us, because it seems with these games with versing tier 1 team comebacks, and us making a pretty big comeback versus SK at the time as well. We were down like, I want to just putting out numbers with like 12-6 or something like that. We managed to claw back. But yeah, at the time SK was pretty much like second or third best team in the world then, I want to say. So it definitely felt like something crazy, and it's just like we're getting our names out there kind of experience.
Yeah, and you also have that loss to FaZe where you go down 1 and 2, right? And I sort of talked about this pretty in depth with Malta as well, where kind of felt like you guys could actually win that game, but something sort of just went wrong on Dust 2. You seemed to slip away from the game off the back of what was like a force buy kind of a round from FaZe.
Yeah, from what I remember, we lost one anti-eco. We started T-side and we lost an anti-eco. And we lost 8 rounds in a row before we clawed back to 8-7. And then we won another, I don't know about winning the pistol, but we were up, like, I want to say 11-9 or something like that, or something around that. And essentially, I remember it was Guardian just walking out short, scouting Sean, and then from there we just like lost every other round, and then yeah, it sucked because we knew we would have it. But
you knew you were toast after that round, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So then, obviously, you're also sort of watching this order game. Do you have any thoughts on how that order game went? The one where they lost to Cloud9?
It went pretty well, like, I guess, with them, but like at the same time, is like, I don't know how anyone would come back from losing a round like they lost, like a 1v4 versus Rush. And yeah, the way everything just went, I was just like, oh my god, I would hate to be in that situation, to know that you lost. But I remember after we were watching or listening to the game, and then they were just like trying to keep it positive and whatnot. But it was just like, those are one of those rounds where it's just like you almost 2000% have to win, but then they didn't. So it was just like,
yeah. I'm pretty sure that was the round that would have actually won the match as well. So if there is ever one that you want to win, it's going to be that. Do you ever sort of fantasize about a world where both you and Order would have gone through to that lower bracket final? Because that lower bracket final would have been the game that put you through to IEM Sydney on the stage. So theoretically, like, and what Malta said was that once you guys felt like if you would have gotten past FaZe, either Cloud9 or Order would have been an easier game than the FaZe game. So was that the same? Are you of the same opinion as that, or did you still sort of see one of those two teams maybe as being a bit more of a final boss than FaZe?
I saw FaZe as like the final boss, pretty much. But yeah, I think everyone did kind of dream of, like, everyone's like looking at the brackets and whatnot, like, if Order beat this, then these guys beat that. Oh,
then we definitely get an Australian team through to the another Australian team.
Yeah, I think everyone was like more excited about getting an Australian team, another Australian team into the finals, if anything, and then
yeah, I don't think anyone really cared necessarily whether it was Order or Grayhound at that point. I think they just wanted one of the two. Once you guys got knocked out, everyone was like, oh, please, at least let's get Order. then they would have obviously had to beat FaZe as well, which would have been a tough ask. But either way, didn't end up happening. Overall, still, that's kind of like, I feel like a big sort of moment in the career of Grayhound as a roster. It's kind of the first one that puts Grayhound on the map. Obviously, it's, Dickstacy did the whole dick joke with Stunner as well. So there was already a bit of a following, I guess, for Grayhound from that. Yeah. But then you beat SK and, it sort of pops off top of Reddit. Do you feel like this sort of did a lot as far as like influencing maybe the brand or the culture or I guess just people's opinions maybe of Grayhound?
Yeah, I think Ollie making that whole joke and whatever, and was like pretty much created our brand as a team. And then what was it? Yeah, being able to beat, like being able to be that team that didn't seem too serious, and then be able to come close and beat like tier 1 teams at the time was just like, also just like, oh, these guys are like funny, but they can also compete. So it's like something new, because I don't think back then like no team was essentially like that at all. Like every team was just like full serious.
Super
Let's win.
serious,
yeah.
So then you go to Pro League Dallas. You guys don't really end up doing too much there, and I guess it's a bit of like maybe a disappointing sort of downturn for Grayhound, right? Because you've had these decent results. You've just come off IEM Sydney where you've beaten an international team. People are thinking, okay, maybe Grayhound can really sort of start to push the issue and become one of those internationally recognized teams if they have a good event here in Dallas. But you go 5-16 in the first round against Liquid. Lucid, dude, that would be a bad result. You go 5-16 against Liquid, and then you go down into the lower bracket. I think it was Renegades that you played that you went 0-2 against. Like, from Walter's perspective, when I was talking to him, he seemed to say that this event was pretty rough on you guys because of a lot of the travel. You've just come off IEM Sydney. You have to travel all the way over to North America, which is a massive, massive time difference. I was at that event as well, and I sort of corroborated that story in that I was asleep from like 4 p.m. in the afternoon until 3 a.m. And so the whole time zones thing, like, is it as big for you as it was for us?
Oh, definitely. I remember we having a big discussion about how we would work with sleep schedules and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we really applied it, but yeah, I remember everyone just waking up at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. or whatever, and then just staying up for the whole day and then sleeping from like 2 to 5 before this. And then it was just not the way that you should go into a competition. And then everyone was just way too tired. And then you could feel that energy just being drained from us while we were playing.
So do you think that maybe you would have performed better had it not, like, let's say IEM Sydney, or let's say Dallas was where IEM Sydney was as well. So everyone just basically stayed in Sydney, and you played IEM finals in Sydney as well. You think you would have performed better had you not had to go and do that sort of travel situation?
I think if we knew what we knew these days and did the right thing in terms of going a couple of days ahead or whatever, I think we would have done a lot better, definitely.
Because you didn't boot camp or anything, right?
No, we didn't. We just went straight there and played.
Yeah. I remember like you only had like 1 or 2 days. The same for me. Like I went there and I think there was that one day where we had dinner, and I think that was the day that we all arrived. In fact, I think you guys were on the same flight as me. And so, as fucked as I was, I'm sure you guys were as well. Yep. Anyway, you don't go too well there in Dallas. Doesn't really require too much discussion because it's not a huge event in your career anyway. You come back though, and there's obviously the minor qualifier for the Faceit minor. And I don't know if you remember this minor qualifier, but this is the one where it had like the most fucked seeding you've probably ever seen. It had Order, Tainted Minds, Darksided, and yourselves on the same side of the bracket. You've just come back from overseas. You lose to Order 19-17 in a best of 1, and your minor qualifier run is done. So what are you thinking? Because I know you're a fairly driven person. You definitely would have wanted to be at this minor and really starting to prove yourselves as the best team in the region, which had kind of already happened. But then you miss out on the minor, so it just raises another question. So what's going through Dexter's mind when you lose this game?
I think in terms of losing the game, it wasn't too bad. Like I know everything sucked. Like it was BO1s, and then the things, the bracket was all messed up. So like when we lost, we were just like whatever. It's just like we didn't lose a BO3. We didn't lose anything too crazy. we know we like just understood that it definitely really sucked, but it was like, come on, there was like, this isn't how a tournament should have been ran, and everything would have been against everyone, and yeah, things happened, kind of thing. So it wasn't too bad.
Wasn't too bad. Okay, that's interesting because you've obviously just integrated a new player as well with Malta coming in, and you had those two decent results, but you weren't able to sort of back that up into the minor qualifier. Now he said you guys were playing on Nuke, by the way, in that game against Order, and he said that he didn't know any of the smokes. It seems like he sort of takes a lot of that blame onto himself, and because you were apparently calling these strats and saying like, let's do this, and he would just say, I don't know the smoke. So you guys just had to sort of default out almost every single round. What's that like from your perspective? Was that... I know you didn't want to really maybe throw Malta on the bus, but like, come on.
Well, it was really shit, and I'm joking.
I would have probably agreed with you, but
from what I remember, yeah, just like we just didn't know any smokes for some reason, and then I guess he didn't know any of the smokes. I'm not really too sure like if it was my fault where I didn't like actually show him, or it was so long between the last time we played Nuke or anything like that. But yeah, it just like we didn't have any smokes, and we just like we're walking around the entire time trying to get entries that way, and that was just really funny.
Yeah, I think from what he said, it seemed like you guys didn't play too much Nuke up to that point anyway.
No.
Right, so you'd already you'd gone through all the strats, but you hadn't really played it. I don't think you played it in like IEM all that much or in Pro League. So fair enough. Anyway, that event goes by the wayside. I mean, it's a pretty big deal, I guess, in theory. Yeah. You should have been at that minor based on the way that you were performing at IEM Sydney, but it is what it is. Straight after that, though, is where you kind of start going kind of crazy, and you stop losing all these these local qualifiers. You go to IEM Shanghai, you go to DreamHack Masters Stockholm. So these are sort of the events where now it really feels like Grayhound is the best team in the region, and no one can kind of keep up with them. Was it the same from your perspective? Like, was it before these events that you felt like you were the best team in the region, or was it after these events, after you've had all that extra international experience over all the other teams, where you just felt like, okay, we're on another level. No one in ANZ can even challenge us?
I think it was after IEM Sydney that I think everyone was just like, yeah, we're gonna head over with this crowd of top teams and hang out with them, kind of thing. We didn't really think we were like the best, like that, but it was just mostly like, all right, this is our potential. We definitely can achieve it all the time. We just need to iron out whatever things we need to, and then just move on from there. Yeah, that's the way I'm pretty sure everyone thought.
All right. So after this sort of period, you go to IEM Shanghai. This seems like a pretty rough event for you guys, because I look at the teams at that event and I think, these are probably teams that Grayhound, the way that they're playing right now, probably can compete against. And you end up coming 7th to 8th. So is this kind of another like wake-up call for the Grayhound roster?
Yeah, I remember it was I remember the issue that we had going to that, and like, well, firstly going to that tournament, like I remember like Nico in an interview was like saying like, oh, these guys probably can win this IEM Shanghai tournament, and like
No
all
pressure.
these other pro players were just saying like, yeah, these guys got what it takes, and whatever. But then when they go into that, everyone was like obviously trying their heart out. But the way everyone was trying their heart out was everyone was watching separate demos of, like, for example, we were versing Tyloo first, and everyone was watching separate demos of how to counter strat them, and then everyone had their own little ideas on each area of the map on how to counter strat um, this, and they would just do like, they were like thinking of like really really silly things like, oh, I saw DD was played like this all the time, so let's do this run boost so we can run past this line or something like that. So everyone pretty much had those ideas, and it pretty much turned out to be like, um, it would just like fuck us essentially, because there was no team synergy, because everyone was like, let's do this because we know how Tyler play. But then in reality, we didn't have any idea at all.
Was that then like a big learning experience for you maybe as an IGL to now sort of tighten the reins a little bit on the roster?
Yeah, at that point, I was just definitely more of a chill IGL, if you could say. Like, I was like, all right, just do whatever, as long as you can frag, then it doesn't matter. But then after that, I remember halfway through the Gambit game or something like that, I kind of not really raged, but I had like a stern talk to everyone, like, what are you guys doing? Like, why is everyone playing like pussies and hiding? Because this is like everyone just had this idea that this is what game is going to do next, and play this, and we just play this way after something like that. So I remember it was like Overpass, like everyone would hide in B site because they thought when Gambit ran out, um, they would do this next step, but then in reality, Gambit just rushed B like every round and just fucked us, and then no one had any ideas what to do. So yeah, I had like a really stern talk, like this isn't how we should run our team, pretty much.
So this is the version of Dexter that Winterfox really needed.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess so.
Okay. Yeah, obviously you go to the ESEA Global Challenge as well. You go to PLG Grand Slam. That was obviously season 29 for ESEA. For anyone that even wanted to, I guess maybe look it up here or there or something like that. But you obviously go to all these events, and then you come back, and no one really is able to kind of challenge you domestically. But then things kind of go wrong, right? Because Gratisfaciton ends up having to move to the Renegades roster at the time. So did you know that Gratisfaciton was leaving maybe prior to some of these events, or was it sort of a thing that came on like really quickly?
It was something that came on pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure he knew like a week ahead that he got asked, but obviously he was very interested in the team and whatnot. And I remember him directly just messaging me and asking, "What do you think?" Because even with such a great opportunity, he was asking his teammates like what to do. And then obviously I was like saying like, "All right." I clearly stated that I'm super biased, that you should stay on the team. So I made sure that I was like stated to him that I'm very biased in that regard.
Did you think that you were the better team than Renegades?
Honestly, I think I said that we were going to be the better team if you gave us time and whatnot. But yeah, I was like, yeah, we're going to be the better team. But I'm obviously very biased in the way I'm thinking and everything. So, and this is definitely a really good opportunity for you. So I was like, yeah, if I wasn't your teammate, I would definitely take that, man. And yeah, that's just how it went.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really blame him for going to join that Renegades roster, and it worked out really well for them as well. So you guys add Sterling to the roster, and I mean, it seems like a really weird kind of a thing, right? Where Grayhound just keeps picking up these kind of new players, right? Even later on down the track. So the thought process, I guess, with Sterling was the same as what it might have been with Prakham back in the day, where he's a fairly fresh face. Like, he's got a bit of experience. He was playing on that legacy roster for a little while. He was in Chiefs even before the legacy roster. So he's been around, but he hasn't been in one of the best teams in the region. And then you instantly sort of pull him into Grayhound. Are you, and maybe alongside the rest of your teammates as well, kind of thinking, all right, this is a player that we can mold. This is a guy that we can build up to be like what exactly the kind of player that we want?
I think at the time we had two decisions to make. We were either going to pick up Sico or we're going to pick up Sterling. And we definitely, when we picked up Sterling, we definitely had the idea that, yeah, we can actually mold him and make him a better player if we make sure we try and give him the best environment we could. But yeah, in the end, it just didn't really work out, I guess. Yeah. I think we try to do a lot to make sure that everything was always sorted for him, and like the roles were like, obviously he was the AWPer, but like he always got the best positions. But I think at the time, in terms of inexperience, experience, he didn't really flourish in a lot of situations, and that's when we were like, we don't know if we can actually continue this, because this is going to be a really long and tedious process for us.
All right. Well, that comes along a little bit later on in the prospect. Was there ever a time where Dexter thinks maybe I should take the AWP back again? Like, not while Sterling's on the roster, but before you add Sterling, do you ever think, what if we just pick up another rifler and I become an AWPing IGL?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of times that happened, but I think pretty much everyone would kind of contest it because everyone believed that I was definitely, in my role at the time, just the lurking IGL. And I was just pretty much the best at that role, no matter what, and everyone pretty much wanted me in that role. So I was like, all right, that's fine, and whatever. But I feel like I could definitely AWP
Did you
still.
want to? Did you want to go to the AWP?
I don't know. There's something nice about just AWPing and being part of the pack, because I was naturally already a supporting player in terms of just knowing how to flash for people and whatever. and then just AWPing, just like make sure you get the frags as well. So it's just like it's easy. AWPing's easy, and plus you can do all the roles. So it's like might as well. But then yeah, no one really wanted that.
A little bit greedy, maybe. Too many cooks in the one. I don't know. That's probably a bad analogy, because whatever.
Yeah.
Too many things for one person to do, I suppose.
Yeah,
is probably
yeah,
the easy way of saying it.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so you pick up Sterling, you go to Katowice in the minor, and you play pretty well there, right? This is the first minor for the majority of the players on your roster, actually, if you remember, because you obviously played in the one in Taipei, but that's like so long ago now. And the rest of the guys haven't actually managed to go to a minor before this. So are you now taking that like Top Gun-esque role that you had? You had him as like not a father figure, but a leadership figure maybe in that Chiefs roster when you went to the minor. Are you now doing the same for the Grayhound roster when you come into Katowice?
Not too much. I remember that was when we had Stu as the coach as well, and or Sonic. And then I guess me and him working together like really helped, because definitely Stu's got a personality where he'll always like calm you down and like make you happy and whatnot. And I guess in the final games, that definitely helped out. So I didn't really see myself as too much of the leadership in at the minor there. It was just more like trying to make everyone feel happy and good, and that's how we just went about it.
Yeah, I mean, you went about it. You managed to qualify for the major. It's the first major that you qualified for, and that Grayhound qualified for as well. So you get your sticker in the game. I'm sure this is a big moment for your career.
Yeah, I think everyone was insanely happy because, firstly, I remember in the game we made an insane comeback as well. It was like we were down 12-6 and we managed to win like 16-13 or something like that. And yeah, making that comeback was just really good and just amazing, essentially. And getting our stickers in the game, making all that extra money, and just everything was just amazing. The best feeling ever.
So I want to touch on this sort of MVP rivalry, I guess, that you guys have a little bit up to this point. Now, we've talked about some of the matches that you played there, but you obviously played against them in this tournament, and I feel like they were kind of like your boogeyman up to this point. You had some okay results against them, but a lot of the time it was MVP that was taking the victory against Grayhound. But now at this event, it's Grayhound that takes the victory against MVP. So what's the theory here? Are you just finally the better team?
I think there could have been a lot of issues going on, like with them. At least if I don't know if they boot camped, but they might have just traveled from all the way from South Korea, so they could have been really tired. But yeah, I just felt like at the time things just clicked really well. Like everyone was very, very motivated to actually win. So, and that just turned out like everyone's personalities, everyone's attitudes to everything was just really good. And then yeah.
Right, so you beat them in the semi-final of the playoffs, and they got obviously knocked down into the lower bracket. They lose to Vici. You play Renegades in the upper bracket final, which you also lose 2-1. Fair enough. Okay, probably expected result. And then you play against Vici, which I think actually is the first time that you guys end up playing against Vici. So what's it kind of like going into this match, right? Because Vici's a really big name in the Asian region, and there's some very good players on that roster. You got Zoking, Freeman, Orman, Advent, Kaze, so it's the same team that is currently kicking around, and is still considered a really, really solid team. So did you sort of go into that one feeling like maybe the favorites or the underdogs? I kind of want to know what your methodology was sort of going into that game, because that's an interesting one when you consider it's like two real heavyweights from the Asian region, or ANZ Asian region.
From what I remember, I think we definitely felt like we were the favorites, if anything, because we nearly beat Renegades a couple times. I think we versed them twice, and each time we took a map off them. And then we were like, oh yeah, this is like, if Renegades can beat these guys, then we can definitely beat them as well. So we were definitely confident. And then think what happened next is we went 1-1 with them, and then we vested them on Dust 2, and then everything was, at the start at least of Dust 2, everything was very down. Yeah.
All right. So then you obviously make your way into the major, right? So you play against a few of the top teams in the region. You go 19 in the region, in the world, I should say. You go 19-17 against Vitality in one of the rounds. So it's pretty tough asking. You go against Fnatic, you lose 0-2, and this is another one of those rivalries that seems to start cropping up a lot. Is Fnatic and Grayhound go against each other quite often.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I don't want to sort of say, you played badly or anything at the major, right? But you did come last, or at least equal last. What's the expectation for you guys when you go into that major? Because it's the first major you've qualified for. You're probably from one of the weakest regions in the world. Do you expect to perform better than what you did? Or is a 0-3 you're still happy with? You made the major, you're happy regardless.
I think at that point, 0-3, we were just happy regardless, and we will have the mentality of whatever we can achieve, and that's always a positive. And I don't think we took too many negatives out of it at the actual tournament, but yeah.
Because I remember at the time, having two teams at the major, having Renegades and Grayhound at the major was still kind of a big deal. Like now, it's almost a foregone conclusion, right? We expect Renegades should make it to Rio, for example. But at the time, it was not the expectation so much as a welcome surprise. So overall, the results seem to be pretty favorable. You seem to be pretty happy with things. Then Sterling obviously gets replaced by Sico. So let's talk maybe about that a little bit. You did mention when you picked up Sterling, you wanted to sort of mold him as a player. He didn't seem to get that much time in the roster. I will say that.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, when you've played for so long, you just have this kind of feeling from players that if they have what it's take or if they don't, pretty much. And then that's what we kind of at the time felt with Sterling. And yeah, as an in-game leader at the time, I didn't feel really confident in him as well because yeah, there was a couple decision-making things that had to be really perfected before you can really become that star AWPer or anything like that, and he just lacked that confidence quite a bit. He was really nice and humble guy, but I think lacking the actual in-game experience like that kind of showed, and then it showed to us, and then we were like, we're gonna try and make this Sico thing happen, and then yeah, that's where we brought him in.
So essentially, you've sort of done a practicum to Sterling, right? You've brought a new player into one of the best rosters and had these expectations maybe that you could turn them into something that they weren't. Now, the difference for Sterling is obviously he's gone back to another team and now he's really developing as a player in Avan and in some of the other teams that he's played in. And potentially sometime down the track, he could still be considered the best AWPer in ANZ. But you've got Sico in the roster now. You sort of already alluded to the fact that Sico was the potential choice between Sterling and Sico initially. So from what I understand or from what I'm gathering here, right, there wasn't really much of another, you didn't think about any other AWPers. There's a few around that people talk about a lot. I don't want to name any names unless you do. But, was Sico the one and only choice?
Yeah, 100%. After we got back from that, we talked to Will, we want Sico, and that was pretty much it. We were just very, very adamant that we wanted him in the team. He had heaps of experience. He was insane clutcher, and then everything just felt right if we got him. So yeah.
And I think around that time, it was actually the perfect time to pick Sico up as well, because if I remember, he had just left Order or Tainted Minds or something. He wasn't actually in a team. So yeah, Tainted Minds, yeah. So you pick up Sico, and this is now around the time where we start looking back towards IEM Sydney again. And so IEM Sydney 2019 rolls around. You're going back to back. You've qualified for IEM again. Grayhound is definitely the best team in the region. Spirits are pretty high. And after seeing the results that you guys were able to get in 2018, surely the expectations were there that you'd be able to do something pretty good in 2019, right? You would have gone into this event confident, I imagine.
Yeah, we definitely felt like we were like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the next time. We're definitely gonna take out one of these tier 1 teams again and feel good about ourselves. And yeah, in the end, I think this event was one of our better events as well as a team versus Europeans and whatnot. So we definitely had that high expectation to knock out as many Europeans as we can, because it's always just felt good to do it on our home soil.
Yeah, I mean, and you do knock out some Europeans. Again, there's that little caveat around this game because FaZe was playing with a sub at the time. So you do get your revenge on FaZe, but it's not the full strength FaZe. Then you go into the game against Fnatic. Like, I don't think it's worth really talking about that FaZe game all that much. That's good result. But the Fnatic game is the interesting one. And this is the same point in IEM Sydney that you got knocked out last year
Yep.
against FaZe initially. Now you're against Fnatic again. And it's a 2-1 loss. So, I mean, this is just like, it almost feels like you're getting better as a team, but the results in IEM Sydney at least are the same. So is that like a disappointing kind of a position to find yourself in? Like, did you feel like we really could have, like, we were looking for the stage game at IEM Sydney 2019, whereas in 2018, we were probably just pretty happy to be competing at the event itself.
I remember Best Fnatic, we almost got like 16-0 and we managed to lose to 16-2. But actually, when we managed to beat Fnatic on Mirage in overtime, it was like the point where I was like, oh my god, we really can do this. And then we're going to achieve what we always wanted to achieve, because I think every Australian team wants to be in front of an Australian crowd at an IEM. So yeah, I was like, going into that, I was just like, that should have been everything for us.
Is it like the most high pressure kind of game that you've really ever played at that point?
Yeah, probably. I think even in the third map, we came pretty close. It was 16-12 or something like that. So that it was one of those games where like, we just had it, we threw it all away kind of thing. And yeah, I guess we didn't really get too pressured by anything, but we just felt that we just didn't achieve what we wanted to at the time, I guess.
So it doesn't, like you're saying, it doesn't really affect you when you're playing in the game?
No, not really at all. It's mostly a positive thing, especially when you're an underdog. You always will be a better, like, in every sense of the word. Like, even if you're losing as an underdog, you're like, all right, well, this is expected anyway. Let's just have fun and win as many rounds as you can, and not really put pressure on ourselves. And everyone starts doing the right things unexpectedly. But then, yeah, you never really feel that pressure, essentially.
All right, so obviously you end up getting knocked out of IEM Sydney at that point. Same result as the year prior, but still not a bad result, having been able to beat one of the... At least you beat FaZe, right? So there's that to kind of think about. You move into ESL Pro League Season 9. You go into those season finals as well. And you don't really perform too well at ESL Pro League finals again. So it feels like you have this great tournament at IEM Sydney's or the local tournaments, and then when you're at the ESL Pro Leagues, things don't quite go right. So is there like maybe like a quote-unquote curse around ESL Pro Leagues for the Grayhound roster, or is it just the travel kind of thing? Because it seems like obviously the first year it was the travel, but does that happen again this year?
Yeah, exact same thing happened. We just went to the tournament all the way to France, and then it's just you get 1 day's rest, and then you're into a game. So it's just like no way that's going to work for anyone. So I think that's at the point where we're just like, we need more boot camps or we need whatever. And then I think that was probably one of the worst, like, in terms of feeling in the team tournaments as well, because just like, I don't know, just everyone was just angry at each other, especially me as the in-game leader. When things aren't going right, just gonna feel just completely just annoyed at everything and start blaming yourself / blaming others. And then like it was one of those tournaments where like even me and Malta were like almost having like a massive fight and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, things like that just definitely gonna happen in CS. And yeah, just from that we just had just that was probably the lowest point, I guess, into the team.
So that was the lowest point for Grayhound as a roster?
Yeah, definitely. Because we knew Erk was going out as well. Like, he wasn't going to be in the roster. So it was just like everything was just going wrong, it felt like.
I didn't even know that you guys knew that at that point, actually.
We knew it. We just didn't want to say it to anyone.
Right. Okay, so even before Erk gets removed, or replaced, I guess he wasn't removed, you have to still go to the Asia Minor, right? So you play in the Starladder Asia Minor with Erkast, from my memory. And you 16-0 Avant on Nuke. So that's a pretty big result already, like, to start the tournament. Do you feel a little bit bad for that, because not that it kind of ruined Avant for that event. They still performed pretty well there, actually. I think they came third.
Yeah.
But do you feel like, we're the two Aussie teams, we should be trying to stick up for each other, we should try to help each other out, and then you just basically 16-0'd them in the first round?
At the time,
Or are you a bit merciless?
we were trying to be a bit merciless because I
Right.
remember in the online qualifiers for that comp, they beat us 16-9, I want to say, on Nuke, and then they picked it versus us again, and then we were like, this is different. This is us with practice, us with land and everything like that, and then we're just like, let's just destroy these kids, and they're just absolutely just were like, let's just destroy them. So that was just our mentality at the time.
All right, and you did destroy them.
Yeah.
So 16-0 against Avant. There's obviously a few other games that you played in that event, which aren't really all that important. You obviously topped your group, so you had a good run through there, beating Avant, and then you also beat this team called Energy Esports, which is from South Africa. So that's a bit weird, but either way, you make it through the group 2-0, which is probably the expectation out of that group. You were expected to be one of the best teams at this tournament. You go into the playoffs, and you're up against MVP PK again. But this is the time now where MVP PK, I mean, it looks like they've got the sick roster going on. They've got Zeta, they've got Zion, you've got HSK, so like all these new players, coming through into this MVP roster, and they're looking fully sick. But it just seems like Greyhound's kind of hit another level, and, you're expected to win these kinds of games now.
Yeah, I think at this point, after I am the major pretty much in Katowice, we're just like, we're so much better than them, and we just had this insane amount of confidence and whatnot going into all this, and it was just like, yeah, whatever, just another team, let's just beat them, and then I think we managed to just beat them very easily as well, from what I remember, and then it was just like, yeah.
Are you particularly cognizant of the fact that like Renegades obviously have the major spot already, and they're not playing at this minor, and this is now your opportunity to take first seed out of the minor? Like, is that a big deal for Grayhound, or is it the whole thing just, okay, let's make it to that grand final, let's qualify?
I think it is a big deal because at the time we would have been like, all right, we have like we're the best or one of the best teams right now in this comp, and we don't have like we're like it feels like we're almost secured the spot essentially because we were just like we're so much better than everyone else. So it feels nice to not have that pressure that you need to perform insanely if per se like Renegades was in the same comp. So yeah, felt really good.
Okay, so then let's talk about the Tyloo game. It's in the upper bracket final, essentially, the qualifying match. They go through the lower bracket final to end up qualifying as well. But you beat them in this upper bracket final. You're up 15-11 on that final map of Train. And then things start to kind of go wrong. So what's going wrong when you're up 15-11 and you've lost 4 rounds in a row for it to go through to overtime?
From what I remember, we're just like I don't know, everyone got way too confident in the decision making, and it's always good to be confident, but I think it was just like confidence without the team mentality in mind. So that everyone's like, all right, I'll make this play. This will win the whole game for us, and then they make that play, and then we lose, and then it just kept happening for 4 rounds in a row, and then it just felt so bad when we went OT. But I guess at the time we were just really focused and yeah, just making sure that we still had the winning mentality and whatnot. And I guess Liam pretty much had the best game of his career, if anything, and
Mm-hmm.
managed to just pull us through.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him about that on his In Retrospect, and he said that he felt that was the best game of his career. So what would have happened had that not happened? Like, let's just say Malta's going even. Is there someone else that steps up, or do you think you guys end up actually losing that match and having to go through the lower bracket?
I think we actually would have lost that match if Liam didn't play as well as he did. He like clutched like 2 insane match point rounds for us. So yeah, definitely would have lost and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely seems like he was in a 2-on-1 to save the match, and Summer missed a shot from upper on the B-bomb
Yeah.
site with the AWP, which is like, I mean, sometimes it's like, you could say it's luck, I guess, in a way, because if he hits that shot, it's all over. Malta ends up going on to win the 2v1 as a result of surviving. Sometimes you just need those opportunities. You got to take advantage of them, right?
Yeah.
So he does that, and you guys go through as first seed. And so you've made it back-to-back to the minors. You're feeling fantastic. You're feeling phenomenal. To the majors, sorry. You've made it back-to-back to the majors. And things are going great for Grayhound. But, I mean, I guess I would be interested to know what the mentality is within the team, obviously, because you've told me now that you knew that at this time Erkast was leaving the roster. And I think, from memory, the announcement went out after you qualified for the major. Like, we knew that Grayhound was going to the major, but we knew that after the major, Erkast wouldn't be playing with the team. So is it kind of like just one more for the boys kind of a mentality within the team now? It's like, we're putting everything into this, even if Erkast might go to another team overseas and in Mongolia and use whatever we've got here against us in the future. Let's just make this happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was one of the better boot camps we had as well. Everyone was just like super like, let's do this kind of mentality. I think I just came off just holidaying in Europe as well, so I was just like super relaxed and everything like that. And then we just went to that tournament just being like, yeah, let's try and make everything the best for him. And even if we suck, we're just gonna make sure everything's gonna be fun afterwards. We'll party in Berlin and whatnot. So yeah.
Party in Berlin, you did. You managed to go through there, and you had a bit of a better performance this time than what happened in Katowice. You sort of managed to win a couple of matches, beating INTZ, beating Complexity, which, I guess, again, are not like the top teams, but you're still slowly finding that progression. So are you pretty happy with how things went at that major event? Is it like a good final send-off for Erkast?
Definitely. I think we could have defeated Vitality as well, because I think during this whole tournament was probably one of my better tournaments on LAN as well versus top teams, and even versus Vitality is one of my better even matches ever. And yeah, I was just like, I want to play our hearts out. And then even we lost 16-11, I believe, versus them on Inferno. And then we just threw away so many bad rounds. And like, I remember after we lost that, like, full nearly cried, and because I was like, oh, we really wanted to do more for Erk kind of thing. And
so it wasn't a good send off then. It was like almost like we almost made it.
Yeah, I think
but
everyone's
it wasn't
like
quite what you wanted.
Yeah, everyone's like really happy, but at the same time, I was like, oh, we could have done so much more for him, kind of thing.
Okay, so you go into this game against Vitality, right? And it's obviously a best of 3. You do lose that first map of Dust 2, which is also your map choice. So at that point, are you kind of feeling like, oh shit, are we getting knocked out 2-0 here?
Yeah, 'cause I think I remember that was when the whole Zaiwu hype was happening, and then I think for legit 2 pistols in a row or something like that, he nearly aced us pretty much. And I think one of the first pistol on Dust 2, the first freaking round we going into, just like he aced us like the sickest ace ever, and I was like, oh no. But then yeah, I think being able to reset between maps is pretty crucial, and yeah.
But surely you have a bit of a better feeling knowing that Overpass is map 2, because I know Overpass was a map that you guys were generally considered pretty decent on. That must have been a nice little fallback, saying like, okay, well, at least there's Overpass. At least we feel like we can probably play that map okay. You end up winning at 16-14.
Yep. Yeah, that was probably one of the best maps I've ever played on LAN as well. And I think at the time they didn't research into our Overpass that much. They just picked it because they were a semi-strong Overpass team, but that was pretty much one of our better maps as well. And then yeah, going to that map felt pretty good because it's like we're starting CT side and whatnot. And then yeah, I think I ended up a couple rounds in, I was like 17 for like 4 or something like that, and just like feeling so good of myself, just playing hearts out. And then yeah.
So you were 28-20 out of that game in the end, out of that Overpass map in particular. And you say it's like one of the better maps in your career, but is it just a case of you felt like you were sort of reading the play well? Like the scoreline, 28-20, it seems like nothing that crazy, right? Yes, it's against Vitality, but did you just feel like something you were having more of an impact on the game than just the KD would indicate?
Yeah, pretty much. It was because Overpass is generally one of my stronger CT side maps. No matter what, there was so many rounds where I had insane amount of impacts where I knew where Vitality were going, and then I'd say rotate this way. And sometimes there was like a couple of rounds where I just walked up behind three of them and then was able to shoot them in the back super easily. And yeah, it's just one of those games where on CT side I just had an insane impact, and yeah, just felt good.
All right, so then obviously you do end up losing that match against Vitality. We move on from the major here to Erkast again, and this is where now Erkast really departs the team. So we've talked about him having his final run in the major. He's departing the team. What does this really do for like the culture of the team, right? Because he's one of the founding members of what ended up becoming Grayhound. And what's it like for you, because he was obviously one of your teammates for such a long time. To lose a player like Erkast, I'm sure, is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a massive deal. He was like pretty much the second in-game leader for me. Like, would always talk about CS in terms of just mentality and all that kind of stuff. So we're always like learning um, from him in terms of different perspectives. So losing that and is pretty big, pretty much. And yeah, obviously him being like one of my best mates in CS was pretty harsh as well. Because it's pretty hard to like really have that friendship because he was always good friends with everyone. But then yeah, like me and him would always talk and be on the same page with everything. So it was like, yeah, it's one of those probably one of the suckiest periods.
Did you ever think about it in the context of we're probably going to have to play against him in the future, right? I mean, theoretically, you haven't so far, I don't think, played against Tiger,
No.
At least recently. If you would have gone to the minor, though, if the minor would have happened because of coronavirus, it didn't. If you would have gone there, you would have had to have played against him. So did you ever think about, like, shit, maybe we actually have to play against Erkast? Was that ever like okay, he's kind of a scary player to go against? Or did you feel like you maybe had that on lockdown?
Not really. When we were like thinking about playing him, was like, yes, we get to see him again. That's it pretty much. We weren't like, all right, this team's gonna be scary because it's Urk or anything like that. It was just like, all right, we want to see our mate again, and that was it really.
Okay, cool. But then you pick up Ins, right? So Ins comes into the roster, and so it seems like, you know, the mentality seems to have swapped over from what it was previously in Grayhound with picking up newer players to now having chosen a known quantity. And Ins obviously a very, very solid addition to any team. And I know from the interview that I had with Malta that Ins was kind of maybe on the radar a little bit prior to this as well for some of the other positions. So is it kind of a situation where, like, Grayhound as a roster / now Renegades seems to keep an eye on things and be like, you know, these are some players that we could potentially think about picking up in the future? Was Ins always on the cards, or was it just when Erkast left that the team was like, okay, who can we use? Oh, let's look at Ins.
I think for all these roster changes, Erk was always part of it, everything. So I think back in when we were playing EPL in France, that was when like everything was settling, and me and him like would have a talk and would be like, all right, who should we pick up for you? And then it was like Inz was always one of the players that we always considered because he pretty much fit the exact same play style that Erk had. So that was like pretty much perfect fit.
It's interesting that Erkast is part of that discussion as well, because I'm sure it must have felt weird to be a player that's being replaced to then be thinking about who should be replacing you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how much input really did he have there? Because he's obviously not playing with the team anymore. So why does he care what's happening with the team? You know, like, it's obviously his baby in a way.
Yeah.
But
I think it's just like because we're all mates and everything, and we realize it's just what he has to do. Like he has to leave like that. So he wanted to say in how we would succeed even. So yeah, I think personally I always considered ins to feel to like feel his shoes. But yeah, when we were talking, he was like, "Yeah, you gotta get ins," and that's pretty much it.
do you think Erkast is still kind of keeping an eye on Renegades / Grayhound, and he sort of feels like he still maybe has a stake in the results? Not that he necessarily does as a player, but like as a person, he's like, I kind of helped build this team, so he wants the Renegades roster to succeed.
Yeah, I think we both have that for each other pretty much. Um, I always wanted to like succeed and do better and like even just move to Australia, become a resident and whatnot. But yeah, every game he would always like say congratulations. Same with Sean, um, and whatnot, and then vice versa with us. And we always want to make sure this original group of players are always just like cheering each other on, essentially.
Do you think there's a world in which maybe sometime down the track you end up on the same team again?
Probably. I don't know. The world's pretty crazy right now in terms of how rosters are
Mm-hmm.
working. Um, I think Tiger was essentially going to pick up two European players,
Smooyer and
Snappy
Snappy.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's definitely a thing that can be considered in the future.
There you go, Tiger. There's an IGL out there for you, maybe. Doesn't speak Mongolian, I imagine, but I'm sure you can make it work either way. Anyway, we'll move on to the Dreamhack Masters Malmo discussion now. We're getting actually close to pretty recent times, right? This is September 2019 now. So you've obviously just added ins to the team, and this is the event where you beat Team Liquid, right? And at that time, Team Liquid was still considered the best team in the world. They'd just come off of a win at IEM Sydney. They did really well at the major as well. Did they? I think they won the major. Am I crazy?
No,
I can't remember.
They lost in the semi-finals. I'm pretty sure, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, they had a good result at the major.
Yeah, they just won the Grand Slam.
Yeah, they won the Grand Slam. So that must. I'm just trying to think of like what the context is here for Liquid when they come into this event. They were ranked number 1 on HLTV. That I know for sure because I went back and looked. After the event, they are ranked number 4. So it seems like their run might have peaked right towards IEM Sydney, right towards when they win the Grand Slam. But do you feel like maybe on a downward trend here, or was it you guys that sort of started that for Team Liquid?
I think with the major is when the downward trend started. I think they were in the quarterfinals, I want to say, and they lost to Astralis and got knocked out. I think after that, they weren't themselves, essentially. So I think with us, versing us, we definitely were just like the team that just made them almost relook at themselves, because you really shouldn't ever lose to a team like us when you're number 1 in the world, right? And I don't know what happened, but yeah, that was probably the solidest. Like, this is like when the whole community was like, all right, they're on a 100% downward trend because they just lost to Grayhound.
I think this is where Grayhound started becoming like the other boys. I don't know if people were using that terminology around your roster prior to this point, but I think this is where everyone was like, yeah, the other boys, obviously with the Renegades, the other boys thing. So what did you think of that? Were you like kind of happy to be the other boys in this sort of like little bit of a shadow maybe to Renegades /100 Thieves, or would you have preferred maybe to sort of forge your own sort of, it's not like a public opinion per se, but it's at least the way that people refer to you in the public?
Yeah, we probably would have liked to forge our own like identity, but I think everyone in the community already like stamped that onto us. So it was like whatever. I was just like, all right, this is just a funny thing that the community wanted to put on us, and we're just like, whatever. Because we were like, at the time, we were making jokes, and we we're like thinking like, what can we do for ourselves that would be like that? And then it was just like way too many cringe jokes. So it was like, yeah, this will do.
Yeah, because you had like the Hounds or Release the Hounds or whatever, but that wasn't like, it didn't really stick so much as the boys did. Anyway, after this event, or maybe during this event, you had this interview, I think it was with HLTV, where you quote, and I'm going to quote what it says in the article. It says, "I stopped respecting the idea that you should respect all these European teams in game." So did you kind of come into this event with that opinion, or was it and was it forged over the course of, IEM Sydney's and ESL Pro Leagues and that kind of thing? Or was this where you really first sort of thought that kind of, or you kind of had that thought where like, okay, I got to stop sort of respecting these teams. Let's try and play a different style, and let's see if we can make that work.
I think, playing after that tournament when we beat Liquid was just like when I realized that on CT side you have to have a certain amount of aggression and almost not really disrespect, but a play style that would catch off these teams a lot more and whatnot. It's not like because you're the underdog you have to play like this, but this is the way CS should be played in general, and this is why these teams are so good, essentially, is because they all have this theory understood. And I think everyone kind of interpreted it pretty wrong at the time, that I was like, oh, I don't respect anyone, I'm just gonna run and do my own thing. But it was more like, this is the way CS should be played, that we shouldn't be respective and give them so much space all the time.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is that you played a different way against teams maybe that were perceived to be better than you.
Yep.
But you shouldn't have played a different way. You should have just played the game that you were meant to be playing. Like what, for example, you might play against an ANZ team.
Yep.
So where does this confidence come from? This is a question that I talked to Pili a lot. Obviously, he's my co-caster, and I sort of said, what would you ask Dexter if you had a chance? And he said he wanted to know, like, where does your confidence come from as an IGL against these kinds of international teams that you're making the correct decisions?
Um, I don't know if it's confidence, or maybe it's just confidence in my own decision, but it's just like, if anything, I understand how a team structure works on the T side, and if you were able to throw any like small dents by getting kills or anything like that within the round, the first kill, it throws off a team so much. So if you're able to reproduce that all the time, then it's essentially you're gonna be very close to winning the whole match in general. So it's like trying to apply that theory towards every single game, and yeah, just being always trying to be aggressive and play your own game.
Okay, so that's towards the end of 2019, which is now moving into the period where you pretty much get picked up by Renegades, right? So it's an interesting thing, right? Because Renegades has always been sort of associated as an ANZ team in a way, even though they're not an ANZ org. Did you sort of see it coming? Did you, as soon as that 100 Thieves deal went through, think, you know what? I think they're probably going to try and pick us up?
Yeah, I think as soon as we won because I think the Renegades team got picked up a long time before that, but it was all secret and hush hush. So um, we knew in Malmo essentially, basically that we were going to have an offer with this team, and we had multiple offers actually from a lot of teams after the way we performed in Malmo.
Do you want to dive a little bit deeper into that, or do you want to keep that a bit more under wraps?
I think the main one that we were that offered us was definitely Tempo Storm.
Mm-hmm.
So they were looking at us as well, and I think a lot of just general orgs were just like realizing like this is like a team that everyone should consider, because I remember um someone even talking about us like from FaZe or something like that, and they were like, oh, like who are these guys? And someone tweeted from FaZe that we should they should pick us up, or some
Mm-hmm.
team should pick us up. So that was like, because FaZe was like saying like, oh, these guys are crazy or whatever. Then we're like, all right,
Other people
yeah,
start
yeah,
looking.
essentially.
Do you think it's like kind of important for someone coming from the ANZ region? Maybe like, you're obviously talking from a player's perspective, but I find from a talent side of things, or as a quote unquote content creator, which I guess I am now, if someone sort of shouts you out, you get this little bit of extra boost to your branding in a way. People start to see you as a bit more legit.
Yeah, definitely. We got a lot of just traction and all that kind of stuff, and everyone like loved our team, the way our social media worked, and all that. And even like our sponsors were looking to increase money in us to make sure that we stay as Grayhound, because
Mm-hmm.
in terms of social media, I think we just dominated every other team. Well, not like in terms of like how much traction we got for, yeah,
Impressions.
impressions for what
Mm-hmm.
we were. Pretty much we had 10,000 followers, but it was just like everyone was talking about us, everyone would join in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation kind of thing. And yeah, that was like there was a weird crossroads where we could have been like, we either join Renegades, join whatever org, or we stay with our own org and we build this brand a lot more essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know, by the way, but Tempo Storm had an Overwatch team from Australia very, very early on when Overwatch kind of released here.
Oh,
So it seems like they kind of have a bit of a finger on the pulse with the ANZ region for some reason. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe interesting for someone to sort of think about while they're watching this, but not too relevant to this discussion. But why do you end up going with Renegades over one of these other teams? Is it just because of that sort of national identity that the Renegades seems to have with the ANZ region?
yeah, essentially. Yeah, they had a lot of backing, and they had their EPL spots, and they had um, just good, like just business fundamentals. And when we were like being offered by the two organizations, we just felt like Renegades was a lot more professional in the way they dealt with things. Um, when we were dealing with Temperstorm, and just sussing out what they were saying, like everything just felt a bit off in a weird way. So we're just like, no, we just don't feel confident in the way they were doing their business. And I think Renegades was definitely the brand that we wanted to go to anyway.
Okay. Did you ever really sort of feel like you lost something though by moving off of the Grayhound brand after being with them for so long and sort of developing that brand? You know, it seems like it's part of the team culture is that Grayhound culture as well, but you can't really do that when you move to a sort of another organization like Renegades.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we've lost that because I think the strong point with Grayound was our social media. We were able to have fun, and we'll always was proud of us. He would like just be like just the best owner ever, and we felt like loved, and there was no pressure, and it was just like this is our brand. We're gonna have fun with it, and then we always felt like pride playing with Ground because it was just like this is our brand for so long, and then we wanted to develop it. We wanted to make clothing like shoes and all this kind of stuff. But then yeah, obviously that just gets turned down if we're joining a new org and whatnot, and we don't have as much as to say as we did in Ground.
Yeah, I think I understand that as well. You know, like obviously I take a lot of pride in the work that I do when I cast for ESL, for example, but I also have this sort of like special place in my heart for the stuff that I'm making now, like on my own. I just feel like, you know, it's like it's my content. And I'm sure that's like it's your team versus you are on Renegades, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, Either way, you know, obviously a good thing for you guys to move into a more sort of professional environment. You obviously, I imagine, have a bit more support from Renegades than what you did from Grayhound. And things seem to be going pretty well for you. I mean, you go to the ESL Pro League Season 10 finals, which again, you know, this ESL Pro League curse sort of seems to continue. This is the first event that you played as Renegades, and you lost to Mouse Sports, which was the winner eventually. The eventual winner is what I was looking for there. So is there like a world where, or is there a feeling maybe where when you lose to the eventual winner of a tournament, you're like, well, you know, like we just got a bad bracket run?
I think definitely because that was when we realized how fucked up seedings can be because we had to verse Australia for the first, and then after that with the verse whatever team wasn't too bad, like Sharks I think,
I
and
think it
then
was
we
Sharks,
verse
yeah.
Mouse. Um, but yeah, after that I was like realizing how bad it can be coming from the Australian region because you're always going to be in the trend that you have to verse first or second best team in the world always, and then from there on you most likely will lose because obviously you're versing the best teams. Um, and then because there's only a BO1 as well usually, and then you're just thrown into the deep end of like BO2s, fighting for your life every single time. And yeah, you never get that middle bracket where you can actually go in the upper bracket too much. Like yeah, so it kind of really sucks in terms of coming from this region and playing those comps like that.
What was the mentality within the team right at that point? Because obviously Dickstacy got replaced pretty much straight after this event. I know that his form sort of dipped a little bit towards the end of things when he was in that Renegades roster as well. So was there a conversation with Dickstacy prior to or at this event where you guys were like, listen, man, you're probably getting replaced?
I
Or did that come
remember,
after?
I think before this comp, I think maybe after the major, I messaged him long like, you have to improve in these areas and you have to try and do this and stuff like that, or whatever's going to happen. And then when we coming to this event, everything just kind of felt a bit off with him. Um, just he wasn't putting as much effort, or just wasn't having the same attitude he had earlier on in the year. So those kind of things just like formed a discussion with the team, and we were like, we can't keep him. Like, just performance isn't good enough. There's no reason to keep him because we're not, we already have a brand, right? We don't need to develop anything, and like getting likes isn't important. Actually, winning is the key thing, and that's where we came to the conclusion that we should try and like replace him.
So was there a situation previously when you were Greyhound that he was kept on the roster because of the branding?
Um, I think so, but I think a lot of the time the timing wasn't good to replace him because it was just tournament after tournament, and I think this was like the last tournament before the massive break. So
Mhm.
we're just like, this is the best period that we can actually do this, and we just did it then, pretty much.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because that was the end of 2019, and you had all the way into 2020 over that sort of Christmas holiday to integrate Hatz into the roster. So it's kind of, I guess, a case of finding the right place at the right time. So you add Hatz into the roster. Does the team culture kind of start to change now from what it used to be? Because when I look at Grayhound now, I look at Grayhound when you sort of first joined and when the roster was starting to come together. It's obviously a very different team, right? You were the team of mates. You had Erkast, you had Grat, you had yourself, and you had Malta, and everything seemed to be going pretty well. Sico comes in, you're like the boys. But now there's all this sort of big sort of roster change coming through. It's like very much more order even than Grayhound.
Yeah.
If you go back and look in the history of ANZCS, now the current Grayhound roster has more order players on it than the initial Grayhound roster. So is the team culture kind of still the same? Like you've kind of still cultivated that same sort of mateship, or have things changed a little bit now?
I think it's a lot better than during that period when it was just well, after we lost Erk. Um, I don't know. There's just like three weird periods in terms of team culture that I noticed. Like the first one was when I first joined, and that was probably one of the better ones where um, everyone was just like had this mutual respect and like good. I don't know, just everything just felt really good. And with especially with Grat and Erk and all that kind of stuff, felt like a family, if anything. But then I think after Erk left, there came this other like mentality where like everything became almost a joke,
Mhm.
and then and I guess it's totally fine. But in terms of my personality, it doesn't really suit me. So it's because there was just a lot of just really like boys jokes kind of things going on. So during that, I felt like I would have been, oh, I was like kind of out of that team culture almost because it's just like I didn't really find dick jokes. I didn't find fucking all that kind of stuff really funny or anything like that. So I was just like, well, whatever, just let it run
Mhm.
and whatnot. But then after we got Jordan in, I felt like that mentality has come back again. Not the last one, the family mentality, like this is the team kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's more like everyone's doing, I guess, intelligent jokes and whatnot. So it feels like it's good team culture again. So yeah,
Okay, so we go into Dreamhack Leipzig. I
Leipzig.
don't know how to say that word.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leipzig. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? That event, start of 2020. It's like your first event with Hatz. So you've had a fair bit of time actually to integrate him into the roster. I imagine you guys would have taken a break over Christmas, but
Mhm.
surely there was a bit of extra time to sort of set him up going into this event. And looking at this event, actually, it sort of strikes me very similar to that IEM Shanghai event that you went to when you were Grayhound, where you probably could have won this event. Did you guys think about it in the same kind of context that I'm thinking about it right now?
I think back then we didn't actually have that mentality that we're going to win it. We are just going to see like how well we can really do. We felt good about it. We felt like we didn't have any pressure, but other than that, it was just like another day kind of thing. We're just like going into it, just being like, all right, we're just going to play our best.
Is that because you'd only recently made a roster change? Like, for example, if you hadn't added Hatz, you still had Dickstacy, would you have looked at this event in a different light?
Probably, because we really would have been like, oh yeah, we're all experienced enough to do the best, and it could have changed our mentalities. But I think after adding hats in, we're still very in the relaxed kind of state of mind, and I think that definitely helps when you're versing all these European teams. Um, yeah, in Leipzig, yeah.
So when you say you didn't go into that sort of with the expectation of winning it, then was second place maybe like in your mind an overperformance? Was that better than you expected to place? Because like again, there's good teams there. Ended up winning. You have Virtus Pro, who is the changed Virtus Pro, but they still looked like a decent roster. They ended up coming last at that event, which is actually quite surprising. North is there. Cloud9 is there. Heroic's there. So there's a few decent teams.
Yeah, I
Would
think
you have
all.
expected to place second in that event?
I think we expected to at least come into the semis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, second was definitely definitely achievable in our minds, but we weren't really looking that far because the thing with these tournaments, you don't really like, for us at least, we don't really like, this is our goal and let's just reach it, kind of thing. We're just like, let's just play, do our best, kind of thing, always, for us at least.
So there is like you're never going to any particular event. For example, like I don't know, the minor, right? You don't go in and say our goal is to X. Rather, it's we just want to perform as well as we can.
Yeah, for us at least, it's just like this is the team we're versing. Our goal is to win, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then next team comes along. This is the team we're versing. This is our goal is to win, and that's it. We're never like looking at the big picture. It's like small steps, and I guess like it works in different for every team. But with our team, it's easier to not to put that pressure on you and being like, oh my god, if we don't win this, we're gonna lose the whole tournament and we're not gonna make the minor. So I think that could be a really bad thing in itself.
Sure. Interesting. Okay. And then after this event, you come second, you're feeling good. Things are going pretty well with Hatz, it seems. You move into IEM Katowice, and this is now the time where coronavirus discussions start to sort of crop up. It's like late January sort of period. And obviously with what we know now, it's like much bigger deal than it was back then. But the event still goes ahead. Did you guys ever sort of have much of a discussion about coronavirus? Like obviously you're overseas, right? You're in Katowice, you're in Poland.
Yep.
Surely you're feeling like individually, I don't know if I really want to be here. Do I want to go back to Australia yet? What's the discussion around that?
I think the timeline was that Italy was becoming like just infested with coronavirus. So it was just like everyone was like, oh yeah, Italy's not doing too well. But I think when we got home is when after that comp was when we realized that, oh my god, it's like actually the craziest thing
bad.
ever. Yeah.
Because I remember that time period as well. I remember having a conversation with someone someone in the apartment complex that I live in. We were just waiting for the elevator, and he was saying stuff, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Then obviously later on down the track, we know it ends up being a pretty big deal. I assume it didn't really impact you guys at Katowice in terms of playing or anything like that. You didn't make it to the arena stage, so you didn't kind of get that experience of being able to play in an empty arena. I'm sure that would have been something pretty weird.
Yeah.
But there was no sort of thought about that when you're playing the group stages or anything like that.
Not at all. We were just like playing to play, I guess. Can't even remember that tournament too well. Honestly, it's probably one of our worst ones, I guess. But yeah, we just wanted to still do good, but at least knock out one team. But I think we just had not too much of an efficient boot camp going into the tournament. That kind of just wrecks things as well.
All right. Well, I don't think there's too much to really touch on for IEM Katowice this year. What I am interested in talking about is the Rio Minor Qualifiers and that whole situation, right? Because we know you obviously ended up qualifying for the Rio Minor, so surely you're feeling like, yep, we've done it again, no worries. And now instantly it's kind of back to what do we have to do now to qualify for the major again, or to qualify for a minor again, or whatever. So what is your thoughts really on this whole Road to Rio RMR kind of a system?
I think it's pretty good. It's justified, I guess, within the situation, but I guess when you just win it and then it gets taken away from you, it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is this?
But does it worry you, right? As Renegades, do you ever feel like, oh, well, we've done it, but now we have to do it again? Is there a thought that maybe someone could beat you, like maybe Order, right? For example, in Road to Rio, we're very close to beating you guys. You were down 12-3 on the second map. So do you ever think like, what a shit situation it would be if we don't actually come first in the RMR system?
Yeah, probably. I think in hindsight, if we did lose, like, would have probably been like, Jesus, the world's against us, kind of thing. Whatever. But in the end, I don't think it's a bad system, but I think there should have been a few tweaks, if anything, towards it based on like previous results, because we obviously just won the minor. So I think maybe just a couple more points towards us or something like that would have been good, because
the minor qualifier.
Yeah,
minor
qualifier.
Context.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Nothing too crazy. Just it's definitely a good system to play in, but I think it could be tweaked a little bit better.
All right, so Road to Rio, you win that. Seems like things are going pretty okay, but is it a bit of a wake-up call against Order, that particular match in the grand final?
Um, it definitely was because we just brought in our new coach as well, and we felt really confident because we pretty much were able to beat every single team pretty easily in the group stages, right? But then we had that 1 day break of not playing, and then every other team gets to play, and then we play the next day. And I think we're just very low energy and whatnot. Plus, coupled with them playing a lot better, plus like having experienced how we like to play, um, they kind of like in their decision making, they kind of counter-strated a lot of things, and then yeah, that kind of made us
So,
lose really easily.
all right, when you're down 12-3 on that map of Inferno, you're going into halftime. You know, obviously you're the IGL. Are you the one that's saying something, or is it your new coach Mitha? Is he sort of in your ear saying, "Listen, guys, this is not the result that should be happening"? You know, how does that map turn around? Is like that's what I want to know. So you're down 12-3. You shouldn't win that map, but how do you win that map?
I think everyone's mentality was just it is what it is right now, and then like everything like hanged in the pistol round essentially, and um everyone knew us, like we all knew our CT side was very strong no matter what, but it was just like if we win this pistol then we're set kind of thing. So we ended up winning the pistol, and it's like round by round we were just like playing and just whatever, because I think in that halftime break, no one was really like saying, "All right, we can do this" or anything. It was just like this weird somber mood, if anything. But then once you actually win one of those important rounds or whatever, it's just like, yeah, we're definitely going to do this now. We just can make sure we play the way we practice, and then we'll just move on from there.
I know this is going to be a theoretical question and maybe you can't give a good answer to it, but what would have happened if you would have lost that game? I'm not suggesting that you would make like roster changes or anything drastic like that, but what would the mentality be in the team if you lose that? Is that going to make everyone like mega tilted and you're going to be all pissed off, or are you going to be like, okay, that's like an added drive for us to get better again?
It should be an outer drive, but I think it could have been gone either way really easily. It could have been like we were playing so well and then we suck. Everyone could have just been against each other kind of thing. But at the same time, um, if we did lose, like it could have been like, all right, we need to do better, because we definitely had a good Myth is like a really good coach, right? And he would have like set our minds right. Yeah, you just lost, whatever, but you're still in this. So I think if we did lose, I think we would have just got back on the road and just made sure we were better and whatnot. So, and I think in a way, right now we're still thinking we lost and making sure that we're still trying to improve in the areas that we didn't improve on, right? And just making sure we're still being better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, right? Because in the context of how you go into that game and the way that the storylines sort of present themselves, is that that probably shouldn't even go to like 3 maps, really, is what I think. Maybe we weren't necessarily pushing that it shouldn't go to 3 maps on the desk, but we were definitely saying like Renegades should win this match pretty comfortably. But it was a little bit too close for comfort. So as far as that result is concerned, while it's not a loss, it is still a loss, if that makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah,
I think you get what I mean. I hope people that are watching get what I mean as well. Anyway, so you win Road to Rio. Cool. You get your points on the board. You get your money. You're happy with that. Now you come back into ANZ Champs. And normally, like at this point in the thing, I would probably not be talking about a normal sort of domestic tournament like that. But since it's so recent and since there's not a whole lot else going on, I just want to sort of get your opinion on, you know, why you're back in ANZ Champs, because you're not really playing anything else, right? So I guess there's no reason not to be.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what the prize or the results will get us, honestly. But
$8,000 for first place.
is there any like ESL points or anything like that, I believe?
Don't think so.
Oh,
Not right
okay.
now.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, we don't really know why we're playing this, but we're just playing it just for the money, I guess. And I think it's
Yeah.
good to always have that official competitive mindset always. So it's good practice, essentially.
You just think you're just sort of taking it as match practice.
Yeah, essentially. Like it's good to have like experience going into like games like these and just with the winning mentality instead of just the mentality that you're just gonna practice and learn. That's nice.
I don't know if you want to maybe talk about this or not, because scrims are sometimes people are a bit funny about talking about scrims. But who are you guys actually scrimming at the moment?
We're scrimming sometimes. We'll play order, but we don't really play them as much in Avant. But pretty much we would play anyone between the 4th and the 7th best teams, if
In
anything.
ANZ?
Yeah. It kind of sucks in Australia where you don't have that much choice and no one really plays that much. But yeah, we just only vest those guys because they're good enough they're sharp enough to punish us, but then still like tactically not that great either though. So it's kind of hard in general. But yeah.
So that was going to lead into my next question, which is like, do you feel as though playing in these sort of domestic tournaments gives the opportunity over to Order and Avant to maybe sort of catch up to you a little bit or get a feel for how you play? Whereas when you obviously come back from overseas, you win the qualifier, you go back overseas again, and they don't really get that chance to kind of catch up. So you're not scrimming them obviously for a reason, right? So does it sort of affect you maybe to play in things like ANZ Champs where they can look at a lot more of your footage and figure you out maybe?
I think in like tournaments like ANZ Champs, we really don't do too much. Like for example, for the whole T side, I just say default and that's it. So it's easy just to not really care about going into too much detail unless we're actually losing. Is when I'll be like, all right, let's do this strat or something like that. But most of the time it's just like default, so it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, having to stay in Australia and play versus all these teams, you definitely notice like you play them once and then you might stomp them, and then the next day you play them, like they've learned from those things. Just like, oh man, they've learned from from what we did versus them, and then it's just counterintuitive, if anything.
That's some pretty interesting context for me because I watch your games a lot when I'm casting ANZ Champs or these sort of domestic tournaments, and I'm always like, well, Renegades should win, therefore I should get to go home early tonight. But then it goes to 3 maps or it goes to an overtime. I'm like, why is Renegades making me stay here until 2 a.m. in the morning? Like, what the fuck? Anyway, that's just a little thing that we casters get a bit uppity about sometimes.
Yeah,
players getting in the server, players not winning games that they should. When you're up 12-3 and you don't win the game and it goes to OT and then you inevitably win from there, it's like, why didn't you just win the pistol in the second half and finish it off 16-4 or something like that? It's bullshit. Anyway, we've caught up to present day. So all you're playing in right now is ANZ Champs. There's going to be these Dreamhack events coming out. And I think this first episode, the part 1 of this, is going to actually air when you're playing on Saturday. Assuming you're playing on Saturday. Maybe you got knocked out already. I don't know. Either way, that'll be on Saturday. The first thing starts on Wednesday. But this episode will go out on Saturday.
Okay, cool.
Second, and then the part 2 will go out. Well, I guess what you'd be watching right now is part 2, so this is probably out the following week. Anyway, so we'll play in that. So now we're up to present day, and we're into sort of the bonus questions part of the discussion where I think we're actually going to get some pretty interesting discussion out of this, but these are all the questions that I couldn't find a way to sort of work into the conversation. So I think a lot of people, they look at you almost as the holy grail of ANZ IGL, and you've already sort of mentioned that you feel like you maybe have a bit of a different style to some other IGLs or to a traditional IGL, whatever. But how do you as an individual prep for a big match, right? Let's say you're going against, the SKs or the FaZes that you've beaten at IEM Sydney. What are you doing? Like, are you watching demos? Are you scrimming? Are you pracking as a team specifically with that team in mind? Or do you just go through the motions and focus on your own game?
Pretty much versing any top team, you should pretty much just always practice with the motion that you'll definitely be using the most, essentially. And I noticed that even versing like lower teams in scrims and whatnot, they're trying their hardest to just beat us in the scrim and whatnot, and then like super excited because they can get a close scoreline and they'll like shoot our bodies and BM us in scrims, and we're just like, what are you doing? Like, whatever, like you're not learning anything, you're just making a solo play and like pushing through a smoke and just risking everything just to win like a round or something like that. But for us, we're just making sure that we're going through our motions of our defaults. This is what we need to make sure we're doing right. Our movement is wrong here or whatever, and then we'll talk about things, and then our coach would make videos for us if like we're doing something right or we're doing something wrong, and then just emphasize on that. And then from there on, when we are about to practice a team, we have a template of each map of information that we want, and then we'll be like, all right, this player plays here. This is how they play in the 5v4s or 4v5s usually, and we'll watch the demos and then just be like, all right, this is our general understanding of them, and then it can change based on the class of team we're versing. So like if we're versing a tier 1 team, we'll go into a lot more detail. But if we're versing like a team from Australia, we're just going to keep it basic and make sure our own playstyle is perfected more so.
Okay, so maybe for like a new IGL or someone that maybe wants to be an analyst or something like that, what should people be looking at when they're like watching demos? Like what do you kind of specifically try to make a note of?
I guess I could put it in like for certain maps. It changes per map essentially. So there's like key information that you always want to know and whatnot. So for um, train, for example, a certain team will have a rotation pattern always set. Like once you take as a T side, you take brown halls control. When do the rotations come in and whatnot? And does this rotation always come in? And then like if you notice that, you'll be like, all right, they always play 3 on A after this certain time, and then just like, all right, we can just do these, and then just like it's like applying your own play style towards how the opponent is working pretty much. So in the context of this team rotating a lot, I'd be like, all right, we have this split or something like we can do on A that we've practiced a lot because they always rotate like this. So we apply that to them and then see how many times it works or whatever until it doesn't, I guess.
So it's kind of a case of finding team's tendencies in a way.
Yeah, tendencies, but tendencies are really super basic tendencies and just making sure you're still playing the most basic game that you are playing.
Okay. All right. And then the following question still sort of touches on your IGL role, and it's where did you get your style from, right? Or have you sort of just developed as an IGL without like I think a lot of people look at certain players and say, I want to emulate that. Was that something that you did, or have you just gone about your career as, sort of your own thing?
It's like half half. I think for this first start of me becoming an IGL, it would have been me looking at Fallen a lot. I was pretty inspired by him, like the way this team played. Like everyone was individually just so talented, and like everyone was comfortable in their roles. So I was making sure that that was a big thing. But for now, I think the way I like to call is still like super basic and whatnot, but it's like making sure everyone has a clarity of mind in what their teammates are doing and what their actions are doing pretty much. And it helps when we have a coach that emphasizes these decision making for us. So now we're just like, yeah, it's easy to like just practice that way and play that way. And then, yeah, that's just like my style for now. It's just like making sure everyone is understands what they're doing, and then just making sure they like can aim and shoot. And that's like the easiest way to play Counter Strike, right? You just make sure everyone can aim and shoot, right? And by doing that, you make sure everyone is in the most right state of mind. And I think that's a lot of that's a thing that a lot of people don't have right. Sometimes, like some players will just be like, "What do I do? What do I do here? All right, I do this," and then they just lose their perception of their own game, and that can just ruin a whole freaking match for them because one player is out because they're overthinking too many things.
So do you see your role outside of the game as well? Like, do you feel like obviously you're the IGL in the game, you're telling people what to do or whatever, calling the strats, but is there an element to your role as an IGL to be a leader of the team outside of the game?
Definitely. I feel like at least for the last boot camp, I'm making sure. Well, I'm kind of like noting down things like we kind of suck at. So outside of the game, so like just maybe even the way we're sleeping is like everyone's just going to bed way too early after we just traveled, and that means like for 5 6 days that everyone just has the worst jet lag ever, and that's what happened before the Katowice boot camp. So things like that I have to kind of look out, like make sure you're sleeping better. I don't know. It's not really too crazy or anything like that, but I'm just like, try making sure your blinds are open before you go to bed, so the sunlight hits your eyes, and make sure so that your the chemicals in your brain are like working right, essentially, so that you can actually assimilate to that time zone really easily. Just things like that, I guess.
Sounds like you're a little bit of a team mum in a way.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I am.
Okay, interesting. I feel like that maybe should be what a manager's doing. I don't know if this is a call out, Will. Anyway, we'll just scoot straight past that one. You guys can have an interesting discussion when he watches this VOD. Okay, speaking of the coaches thing, right? You sort of touched on that a little bit as well. And I've always looked at Grayhound and RNG as a team that's never really like had a coach in a way. You've had a few. I know you cycled through a couple around the IEM EPL that I went to you guys with, which was 2018. You had a coach there. You had Neil M for a little while. And now you've got Mitha, but you've never kind of had this coach that's been there for like a long extended period of time. It's only ever really been a 2 or 3, maybe. I guess in the case of Neil M, it was like almost maybe 6 months. I don't know. But it doesn't feel like you've ever found a solid coach. So what's the reasoning for that? Like, is it your fault? Obviously, being the IGL, I assume you have a lot of input on these kind of things. Although what I've learned out of this interview is that maybe you don't have as much input. But what's the reason? Like, why are you guys never being able to find a solid coach?
I think with the first coach we had back in IEM Sydney or whatever, he was actually a really good coach, but as a person, it was a bit weird. Not like weird as a person, as in we don't like him, but the things he did was really weird, like very suspicious. Like he was drug dealing or something. No, I'm not trying to out him like that, but it just felt like weird. Like why do you want to stay in Australia for longer after this, and then do all this stuff? And it just didn't click pretty much. But yeah, he just didn't click as a person for us. And then with Neil M, I don't know, he was a good hype man, but in terms of coaching and suitability with my personality, I don't think he was good at all, or even as a coach, unfortunately, because yeah, just for
you're a very serious guy.
I'm
Like
I'm
it seems like
I'm
to
a
me.
serious person when it comes to business and whatnot, and pretty much my whole life is business right now. So yeah, but with him, he just didn't do the work essentially. And for example, for the whole of the major, I had to do everything and whatnot. So that's what it felt like. And yeah, um, he got a lot of credit for work I did, and it just just didn't feel good, pretty much. So
I feel like you're the kind of person that gets kind of annoyed kind of easily. Is that like, do you have a fiery temper in a way? Like if someone's pissed you off, it's pretty easy to get on Dexter's bad side. Let's say that.
probably. I'm not too sure. Like sometimes I just don't give a fuck at all, but it's just like if someone's in my team and we're trying to achieve the same thing, but this person doesn't put as much effort in it, that's probably one of the things that probably would annoy me the most. Like, why should I try for someone else?
Sure. What about Sonic?
Sonic was great. He was one of the considerations for even this lineup right now to be a coach as well. And we were halfway through discussions with him, but I think it's quite difficult in his lifestyle because he's got a job, and I think the decision that we made and he made for himself, that to stay with his job, is much more fruitful. Like he's gonna get an amazing career out of the engineering that he's doing. So yeah, it's totally good. But yeah, he was an awesome guy. Like everyone loved him. Like really nice personality and whatnot. But I think in terms of coaching, I don't think it would have suited too well for his lifestyle.
Yeah, sure. I really liked working with you as well, Stu. Just if you're watching, shout out. He's probably not. Let's be real. Yeah, look, I think if he was going to be the long-term coach, he might have. You probably would have ended up using him for that extended period after he was with you guys on Grayhound, right? Like if that was going to happen, it would have happened then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we move on then from the coaching discussion, and this is now another question from another one of my colleagues, Mac. He wanted to sort of know what you thought the AU scene sort of had to do to catch up with Renegades, or like what are maybe not catch up with Renegades, but like let's say what are the flaws of the AU region and the teams, and what can they do to be better? How does Dexter fix the AU region? Not that it's broken per se, but how can they be better?
It would just be like everyone needs a lot more sponsorship and money and whatnot. It's like the difference between Australia and like Europe, for example, is we all practice from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock or whatever. In Europe, they'll play from 2 o'clock till 10 p.m. So that's like the biggest difference essentially. And obviously they're getting paid money to do all this stuff, so they can do that. But we're not, the lower teams in Australia aren't getting paid, if anything. And that means that they don't have the time for it and they're just working for the sake of just making their goals happen essentially, or the competitive spirit. So if every team, every organization in Australia had $500,000 and
that's a lot of money,
and had no corruption in terms of the way they want to keep their money, because I know some of these organizations can be a bit dodgy as well with their people. So it's just like if everyone's got this $500,000 for each team for the next 2-3 years or whatever, and then that's how it's going to work. That's the only way it's going to make Australia be better, is money, unfortunately.
Maybe still a little way off from that, at least for the majority. There's maybe 2 or 3 teams that could potentially hit that mark. Anyway, Final couple of questions then, and this one's from our boy Blair, and he wants to know if you ever got an offer from a North American or European team. Maybe this can be 2 questions. Have you ever had an offer from a North American or European team? And currently, at this point in time, if you got one, would you take it?
Currently, at this point in time, I probably wouldn't take any teams offers unless it was just like a god tier team, which anyone would. But any team that isn't solid. I mean, can't even speak. I wouldn't, because it's too much of a toss up in the air. But if it's like Liquid or something like that, obviously anyone would take that. But it's just like, yeah, you don't want to put in too much work. Well, you want to put in work, but you don't want to essentially put yourself in a spot where you could just be like, all right, this team doesn't work. Everyone hates each other. Like, I don't know, like a lot of teams that's happened in the past, and then just like, this isn't going to work, and then just you're out of a job within 3 months. So I think it's way too risky and not smart in terms of just career progression. But in terms of the offers I've gotten, I don't want to disclose anything, but yes, definitely some big League of Legends teams have offered me. That's all.
Some League of Legends teams. All right, there you go. Okay, maybe this is a cop-out question. This is the last question that I've got for you. But have you ever had any regrets in your career? Like, what's the biggest regret of your Counter-Strike career, if any?
For me, I don't think I have too many regrets. The way I see things in CS and whatever is like, I try to learn off every single experience, being it bad or positive or whatever. So I always have that take essentially. So if we're going to, if anything, I always try and make sure there is no regrets and I'm always learning, because if there are regrets and I'm not learning, then I think I failed as a player and person.
I think that's a good mentality to take into your career, and I'm sure anyone's career. They can probably take some wisdom from you, Dexter. Anyway, that's the end of the interview. So, I mean, this is your opportunity now to give a shout out to anyone that you want to, or say your piece about how bad ANZ casters are. I'm sure, I'll pass that along for you.
I think everyone's doing great. I don't have anything too much to say. Just have a good day.